While the larger goals of this Philadelphia 76ers season seem to already be out of reach, Daryl Morey may have struck gold in the NBA trade market, adding Quentin Grimes at a midseason acquisition. The former Dallas Maverick and former New York Knick is immediately establishing his impact on this Sixers team, bringing a hunger and two-way ability that this roster has been starved of. I want to break down this unique opportunity that Daryl has carved out and why Quentin Grimes may be a larger part of this Sixers future than a lot of us could have remotely expected at this point. Now, the Sixers have entered the NBA All-Star break, but in the last memory that we have Quentin Grimes, it was a 30-point performance against the Brooklyn Nets. Also added 9 rebounds, 4 assists, shot 10 of 18 from the field. And what impressed me the most about Grimes, he competed until the very end of that game. He was bringing it on both sides of the floor, forcing turnovers. They were full court pressing at the end, driving down the lane, getting to the layups, and it was a level of just desire on the floor that is the biggest missing part of that Sixers team, and that is a big deal moving forward. Now, to reflect on his full 4 games, the sample size that we've seen from him in a Sixers uniform to this point, it was the 30.9 rebound and 4 assist performance in the first 3 games with a little bit more limited minutes, that 30-point performance being his first start of his Sixers career, that he's averaging or had 13.7 rebounds and 4 assists, as well as 2 steals the game prior, 10.7 rebounds, 5 assists and a block the game prior, and 14 points, 2 assists, a block, and shot 5 of 9 from the field in his Sixers debut there. He's got a willing trigger, a really quick release with that jump shot, and a guy who looks like he's got some decent defensive chops. So the early return of Quentin Grimes has been very impressive, and I do think that was intentional by the Sixers team. Now, hand up here, I'll be the first guy to admit, may have been a little bit off of my initial analysis of this trade. This comes from the place of me being a Caleb Martin fan, and to give the full details of this, that they traded away Caleb Martin in exchange for Quentin Grimes and the second round pick. And also there was a little bit of a weird medical deal with Caleb Martin's physical that ultimately the Sixers had to add a second round pick there. I think that was the right call, especially when you look across the league with the Lakers and Hornets and sort of the, fallout of that failed Mark Williams and Dalton Knecht trade, seeing Dalton Knecht pulling himself from games for personal reasons, looking pretty sad on the bench there. I think that is a pretty, way that you can break up an organization there. So glad the Sixers just coughed up an additional second round pick, even though it is unfortunate there. And on the bright side for the Dallas Mavericks, even if Caleb Martin never plays, even if Quentin Grimes turns out to be an absolute star, this still won't be the worst trade you made at the deadline, as you still sent away Luka Doncic. But to bring it back to Quentin Grimes and the Sixers team, I do think this was about getting more than just this year. That's sort of the outlook for this season. A lot of ways in which we approach this with the KJ Martin contract and kind of speaking about things, it felt like it was see how the beginning of the season goes, and then you can attack and get that missing piece. Well, we never got a chance to see that. The Joel Embiid has been in and out of the lineup. Paul George has not looked like remotely the version of the guy that they intended on signing. So instead, it was sort of one of those, we cannot make a trade just to improve this season. We got to think wider. And that is where Quentin Grimes comes in. Now, granted, these stats don't jump off the page for the season, but he's averaging 10.3 points per game this year, 3.9 rebounds, 2.2 assists, shooting 46.1% from the field, 38.8% from 3, just 24 years old at 6'5", a true shooting guard, which is something that the Sixers truly have not had in really several years to this point. That he is a guy that is not a combo guard a la Tyrese Maxey or Jared McCain there. He's a guy that is a pure 2, sort of from that Klay Thompson, not Klay Thompson by any means as far as caliber of talent, but a guy that is that archetype of player. That's what I see for Quentin Grimes, and I'm intrigued by what he can grow into. And to bring in the financial side of things, I always think that is important for these conversations. And for Grimes specifically, he is in the final year of his deal. It was a team option this year, and you can see how things did break down. That he spent the first 2 seasons of his career with the New York Knicks, showed some signs of promise, and he was a guy that I had my eye on with the Knicks there. I know Knicks fans still really like him. Moved out to Detroit and then ended up in Dallas for the start of the season, ultimately landing on this Sixers team. So he has moved around a little bit, but if you do dig into those moves there, it is a bit kind of CBA driven, I would say that. We're going to see that more and more in these coming years as this new collective bargaining agreement takes full effect. I mean, we've already kind of seen some massive deals blown up or be forced because of it. When you think of the Karl Anthony Towns trade for the Timberwolves, with that being financially motivated, the Luka Doncic trade was one that the Mavericks were really hesitant about investing that amount of money into him and decided it would be better to move on. I wouldn't entirely qualify that one as a CBA deal. I think that was more of a, general manager taking a power trip and just having a legitimate issue with the guy for whatever reason. Giving up on one of the top 4 players in the league is still absurd to me. But my point being, Paul George, another example here of a guy that was let go because of CBA restrictions. That is something that's going to be more and more something to pay attention to, and I think Grimes has been more of a victim of that. But to look at the cap sheet From the Sixers' perspective here, you can see how top-heavy this roster is. So much of their money is tied up in Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey. And obviously, they are not reaping the benefits of that investment game plan on this season, with a lack of availability being clear for just about all these guys, really the top two there. Maxey did miss the final game before the All-Star break with a knee contusion there, but that isn't something I would think is a long-term worry, unless the Sixers want it to be a long-term worry, and we are going full tank mode here. But what's particularly interesting about Grimes' contract, he will be a restricted free agent. And why that is important, the basis of it, the bare bones of what that means is basically other teams can make an offer and you have a chance to match it. Is sort of the really, Spark Notes version of that there. But what also comes along with it, there's some intricacies that you can swing as far as trade deals, making sure that you can go above the cap in certain ways. It's interesting when you have these conversations, it all fits together like a puzzle. Like if you do this, if you tap in the mid-level exception, then that takes away this. You can get hard capped at that number. I'm disappointed. I've been trying to nail down Yossi Goslin, who does awesome work breaking down the salary cap. Was supposed to record with him earlier today, but he had to reschedule there. So still hoping to make that happen, and definitely will be tuning in for some specific questions about how this kind of all impacts the Sixers directly. Gershon Yabusele, certainly a talking point that I do want to get into there. But for now, to keep it locked on Quentin Grimes, this is the type of swing that you can take, as he, yes, can help for the second half of the season, and they do have a pretty clear inside track to retaining him. That I do believe Daryl Morey views this guy as a pillar of the franchise in the way that he can be complementary to Jared McCain or Tyrese Maxey. There is a little defensive-minded approach to his game, that he is stingy. He gets his hands in there. He's active on that side of the floor, forcing turnovers, creating steals, and those are really important things to pair both of those guys with. So it will be interesting to see if that is the case there and how things play out from here. And that is really the mindset that I want to see for this Sixers team. That the goals of winning have unfortunately slid down that list of priorities. This is about figuring out who the keepers are and who needs to go for next season. When you look down this cap sheet and you think about how this season has gone, this cannot just be a run it back next year type of team. You have to evaluate which members of this organization are keepers and who it is time to move on from. Quentin Grimes is a guy that is popping of late, and obviously there is 30-ish games left to play when they do return from the All-Star break, but when you look down this list, Eric Gordon simply cannot be back on the Sixers team next year, even with him having a couple flashes of solid shooting. Kyle Lowry probably should not have even been back on this team this season. Andre Drummond cannot return to this team and is already getting DNPs while Joel Embiid is out. That is the opposite reason we brought into this organization, but he simply has not been holding things down in the way that it was hoped there. Kelly Oubre, I'm a Kelly Oubre believer. I respect the way that he does buckle up and compete. That is the type of tone that I do think should be set for this organization. And while he does have flaws, wish he was a better shooter, his screen navigation on the defensive end does leave plenty to be desired, but I will stick with guys who bring that motor on an every night basis. And that's what I'm seeing with Kelly Oubre. That's what I'm seeing with Quentin Grimes. That's what I'm not seeing from the overall roster nearly enough. So that is a lesson that I want this Sixers team to lean into. I do think Quentin Grimes is a guy who is likely going to be the starting shooting guard of the future for the Sixers organization. We will see how these steps lead up until the second half of the season and obviously going into those negotiations in the summer. But that is a positive that we can kind of sleep on to this point. That I could not be more impressed with what we've seen from Grimes. A 30-point performance in just your fourth game with the team is not something to just brush over. And shout out to Grimes for really bringing that effort level. Again, the defense is what is standing out to me the most. So while this is a disaster of a season, while this is not remotely what we want to be talking about at this stage of the year, that we should be gearing up for who the playoff matchups could be. How do you climb to the seed that sets you up on the best path of success to the playoffs? That is not where the Sixers are at. Instead, we're talking about Quentin Grimes potentially being the shooting guard of the future. But you know what? We're going to keep breaking things down no matter how things go for the Sixers here. So if you're still rocking with us, appreciate each and one of you guys. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button if you have not already. At this point, just over 70% of you guys watching these videos have not subscribed just yet. So let's change that. Let's hit this button, keep us growing here on Sixers Digest, and we will get through this treacherous season together. So appreciate each and one of you guys tuning into this video here. Do want to hear your thoughts on Quentin Grimes in the comments. How do you see fitting him in? And you're on the same page as me. This is a dude that the Sixers team needs to keep on to moving forward. Drop your thoughts below. Smash that subscribe button. Drop a like on this video. We'll be back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.